Imagine standing in a crowd so large that it stretches to the horizon. Thousands of individuals, all dressed almost identically, all making noise at the same time, all moving constantly. Now imagine trying to find one specific person, not using a phone, not using a name tag, not using directions, just memory. That sounds nearly impossible. Yet penguins do exactly this every year. In some penguin colonies, tens of thousands of birds gather in a single location during breeding season. From a distance, the colony looks like a living black and white ocean. Everywhere you look, penguins. Everywhere you listen, noise. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, a penguin returns from the sea and finds its mate. The same partner it left days or even weeks earlier. No confusion, no wandering randomly through the crowd, no endless searching. It simply locates the right bird. How does a penguin identify one individual among thousands that appear almost identical to human eyes? The answer is one of the most extraordinary stories in animal communication. Welcome back to Bird Theory. Subscribe before you leave, because today we're exploring one of the greatest mysteries of penguin life: how penguins find their mate in a crowd of thousands, why their relationships are far more sophisticated than most people realize, and the remarkable abilities that allow them to reunite after long separations. Stay until the end because the final method we discuss is so effective that scientists once struggled to believe it could work in such overwhelming conditions. Let's begin with the biggest misconception. Most people think penguins recognize each other primarily by sight. That seems logical. Humans rely heavily on vision. We recognize faces. We notice clothing. We identify people by appearance. But penguin colonies create a problem. From a penguin's perspective, visual information isn't always reliable. Breeding colonies are crowded. Birds move constantly. Weather conditions can be harsh. Snow, wind, and shifting groups can make visual recognition difficult. So penguins rely on something else: sound. And not just ordinary sound. Extremely specialized sound. Every penguin possesses a unique vocal signature. Think of it as the bird equivalent of a voice print. Just as you can recognize a friend's voice without seeing them, penguins can recognize specific individuals through vocalizations alone. Researchers studying species such as the emperor penguin and king penguin discovered that mates can identify one another among thousands of calling birds. That achievement becomes even more astonishing when you consider the environment. Imagine trying to recognize one voice in a stadium filled with shouting people. Now imagine doing it while surrounded by wind, movement, and constant background noise. Yet penguins accomplish this regularly. When a penguin returns from feeding at sea, it often begins calling. Its mate responds. The two birds essentially conduct an acoustic search operation, exchanging calls until they locate one another. And what scientists discovered about these calls revealed something extraordinary. Penguins aren't just listening for a familiar sound. They're detecting incredibly precise information hidden within every call, information that allows them to identify the exact individual they're searching for. For years, scientists wondered how penguin calls could possibly be distinctive enough to work in such enormous colonies. After all, many animals make vocalizations. Birds sing, dogs bark, whales call. But recognizing one specific individual among thousands seemed almost impossible. Then researchers began analyzing penguin vocalizations in detail. What they found was remarkable. A penguin call is not a simple sound. It contains multiple layers of information, tiny variations in timing, subtle differences in frequency, unique patterns that remain consistent from one call to the next. Together, these characteristics create an acoustic signature as distinctive as a fingerprint. To human ears, many penguin calls sound similar. To another penguin, they do not. Scientists studying king penguins discovered that mates could recognize each other even when separated by hundreds of feet within dense colonies. Experiments using recorded calls repeatedly showed that penguins responded far more strongly to their partner's voice than to the voices of neighboring birds. The recognition was immediate, accurate, reliable. And mates are not the only ones using this system. Parents and chicks depend on it too. This becomes critically important because many penguin species leave their chicks while searching for food. An adult may travel dozens or even hundreds of miles across the ocean before returning. When it comes back, thousands of chicks may be gathered together. To a human observer, the scene looks hopelessly confusing. Yet parents routinely locate their own offspring. Likewise, chicks recognize the calls of their parents. The family reunion often begins with sound, long before the birds are close enough to identify one another visually. In some species, this ability can literally mean survival. A chick that follows the wrong adult may not receive food. A parent feeding the wrong chick wastes valuable energy. The stakes are extremely high, which helps explain why penguin vocal recognition evolved to become so precise. But sound alone is not the entire story, because penguins often face conditions that seem designed to make communication difficult. Powerful winds, blowing snow, crowded breeding grounds, thousands of overlapping calls. Under those circumstances, even a remarkable voice recognition system might struggle. And yet penguins continue finding each other, again and again. Season after season, researchers eventually realized that penguins were using more than one clue. Once birds get close enough, visual information begins helping as well. Posture, movement, body size, behavior. These additional cues reinforce what the calls have already revealed. The voice identifies the target. Visual details confirm it. Together, the system becomes extraordinarily effective. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that many penguin pairs repeat this process year after year. The birds separate, travel vast distances, return months later, and somehow reconnect, which raises an even more intriguing question. How strong are these pair bonds? Are penguins simply locating a familiar breeding partner, or is something deeper happening? The answer reveals a side of penguin life that has fascinated scientists for decades. Because for many penguins, finding the right bird in a crowd of thousands is only part of the story. Remembering that bird may be even more impressive. Finding a mate once is impressive. Finding the same mate again after months apart is extraordinary. And that's exactly what many penguins do. Contrary to popular belief, not every penguin species forms lifelong partnerships. Some species show stronger long-term pair bonds than others, and relationships can change from year to year. But what remains remarkable is the level of recognition involved. A penguin returning from the ocean is not simply looking for any available partner. It is often searching for a specific individual, one it has bred with before, one whose calls it remembers, one whose behavior has become familiar through previous breeding seasons. Researchers studying penguin colonies have repeatedly observed returning birds seeking out former partners and re-establishing pair bonds after long separations. This process provides important advantages. A pair that has successfully raised chicks together already possesses experience as a team. They know how to coordinate incubation duties. They understand each other's timing and behavior. They have effectively worked together before. And in the demanding world of penguin reproduction, experience matters. Consider the emperor penguin. These birds endure some of the harshest conditions on Earth. Temperatures can plunge far below freezing. Powerful winds sweep across the Antarctic landscape. Survival depends on cooperation. During breeding, one parent may travel far out to sea searching for food, while the other remains behind protecting the egg or chick. Eventually, the traveling bird must return. And when it does, it needs to find its partner among thousands of nearly identical penguins. Failure would have serious consequences. The chick may starve. The breeding attempt may fail. Yet remarkably, these reunions occur with astonishing reliability. The more scientists study them, the more impressive they appear. And perhaps that tells us something important about penguin intelligence. People often underestimate birds. We imagine instinct guiding every behavior, simple responses to simple situations. But penguins reveal something more complex. Memory, recognition, communication, social bonds, all operating on a scale that allows individuals to maintain relationships within some of the largest animal gatherings on Earth. The colony may appear chaotic. To the penguins, it is not. Each bird exists within a network of familiar voices, familiar partners, and familiar social interactions. What looks like confusion from the outside contains an astonishing amount of order. Which brings us back to the original question. How do penguins find their mate in a crowd of thousands? The answer is a combination of extraordinary vocal recognition, memory, visual cues, and social bonding refined over millions of years of evolution. A penguin doesn't see an anonymous crowd. It hears individual voices. It remembers specific partners. And it identifies subtle details hidden within the apparent chaos. And when the moment finally comes, after weeks or months apart, it does something that still amazes scientists. It finds exactly the bird it was looking for. Not because the colony is small, not because the task is easy, but because evolution has given penguins one of the most sophisticated recognition systems in the animal kingdom. So the next time you see footage of thousands of penguins packed together on a frozen landscape, remember this. Somewhere in that sea of black and white, one penguin is listening for a single voice. One familiar call, one partner, and against all odds, it will probably find them. Tell me in the comments, do you think you could find one specific person in a crowd of 10,000? I read every comment, and I'll see you in the next one here on Bird Theory.